The Sabah dispute is one of Southeast Asia's most complex and long-standing territorial issues. It's a tale of colonial history, diplomatic tension, and legal debates that have spanned decades. But why does it matter today? In this video, we'll break down the origins of the dispute, explore the key players involved, and discuss the current situation, all while keeping it fun with some intriguing facts along the way. Stick around because this is one story that's far from over. The roots of the Sabah dispute stretch back centuries, beginning with the Sultanate of Sulu, a powerful maritime kingdom that once controlled parts of what are now the southern Philippines, Sabah, and parts of Indonesia. The Sultanate of Sulu was a key player in regional politics during the 15th and 16th centuries, and in 1704, it received Sabah from the Sultanate of Brunei as a reward for helping suppress a rebellion. This transfer wasn't just about land, it was a strategic move that strengthened the Sultanate's influence in the region. Fast forward to the 19th century, and European colonial powers were expanding their reach in Southeast Asia. The British North Borneo Company, or BNBC, came into play in 1878 when it entered into an agreement with the Sultanate of Sulu. The agreement, written in Malay, contained ambiguous language that has been the source of the ongoing dispute. The British interpreted the agreement as a cession of sovereignty, while the Sultanate of Sulu, and later the Philippines, argued that it was merely a lease. This period of colonial expansion was about more than just land. It was about control over vital trade routes and resources. Sabah's rich natural resources, including timber, palm oil, and petroleum, made it a valuable territory, one that both regional powers and colonial administrators were eager to control. Fun fact: did you know that the Sultanate of Sulu still receives an annual payment from Malaysia for the lease of Sabah? The payment is around 5,300 Malaysian ringgit, roughly $1,300 US, a remarkably small amount given Sabah's immense economic value today. But what happens when a historic lease becomes the subject of modern-day national pride? The Philippines stepped onto the stage with a bold claim, setting the stage for a diplomatic tug-of-war. Let's explore how the Philippines got involved and why this dispute isn't just a relic of the past. When the Philippines gained independence from the United States in 1946, it began to establish its identity as a sovereign nation. Part of this process involved asserting territorial claims inherited from historical entities like the Sultanate of Sulu. In 1962, the heirs of the Sultan of Sulu formally ceded their rights over Sabah to the Philippine government, solidifying the Philippines' position that Sabah was part of its territory. The formation of Malaysia in 1963, which included Sabah as one of its states, immediately sparked a diplomatic confrontation. The Philippines protested Sabah's inclusion in Malaysia, leading to strained relations between the two countries, including the severing of diplomatic ties for several years. The Philippines argued that the 1878 agreement was a lease and not a cession, meaning that sovereignty over Sabah remained with the Sultanate of Sulu and, by extension, with the Philippines. This interpretation of the agreement formed the cornerstone of the Philippines' legal claim. Despite a referendum held in 1963 in which the majority of Sabah's residents chose to join Malaysia, the Philippines argued that the referendum was unfair and did not settle the issue. This referendum was recognized by the United Nations, but the Philippines maintained that it was not a true reflection of the will of the people. Fun fact: despite the tension, the Philippines and Malaysia are both members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, where they cooperate on various regional issues. It's a bit like two neighbors who disagree over a fence but still manage to host the neighborhood barbecue together. As the Philippines laid out its claim, Malaysia wasn't about to back down. With international support and a firm belief in their sovereignty, Malaysia had its own perspective on who really owns Sabah. Let's see how Malaysia has defended its claim. From Malaysia's perspective, Sabah is legally and rightfully part of its territory. Malaysia views the 1878 agreement as a cession of sovereignty, not a lease, and considers the issue settled with the 1963 referendum in which the people of Sabah chose to join Malaysia. For Malaysia, this referendum was a clear expression of self-determination and a democratic validation of Sabah's status as a Malaysian state. The inclusion of Sabah in Malaysia was crucial for the new federation's stability and economic viability. Sabah's rich natural resources and strategic location made it an indispensable part of Malaysia's plan for nation building. Internationally, Malaysia's claim is supported by the recognition of the United Nations and the broader international community. When the Philippines brought the issue to the United Nations, the UN's endorsement of the referendum further strengthened Malaysia's position. The International Court of Justice, or ICJ, has been reluctant to take up the case, seeing it as a settled matter. For Malaysia, the ICJ's hesitance reinforces the idea that the dispute is a non-issue, legally speaking. Fun fact: Malaysia is home to one of the world's oldest tropical rainforests, and Sabah is a biodiversity hotspot. It's not just politics that makes Sabah valuable. Its rich natural environment is another reason why the region is so important to Malaysia. With both sides firmly entrenched in their positions, where does this leave the dispute? It's not just about legal arguments anymore, it's about the people who live in Sabah. What do they think? Let's take a closer look at the Sabahans perspective. The people of Sabah, known as Sabahans, have a unique perspective on the dispute. For many Sabahans, their identity is tied to Malaysia, not the Philippines. Since joining Malaysia in 1963, Sabah has seen significant development in infrastructure, education, and healthcare, contributing to a strong sense of belonging among its residents. However, there are also feelings of neglect. Some Sabahans believe that the federal government in Kuala Lumpur doesn't give enough attention to Sabah's needs. These sentiments have fueled calls for greater autonomy or even independence, though these remain minority views. Sabah's large population of Filipinos adds another layer of complexity. Many Filipinos in Sabah are descendants of migrants who fled conflicts in Mindanao during the 1970s and 1980s. While many have integrated into Malaysian society, issues of citizenship and legal status continue to pose challenges. Despite these challenges, many Sabahans, both native and migrant, see their future within Malaysia rather than as part of the Philippines. The benefits of being part of Malaysia, including economic opportunities and relative stability, outweigh the historical claims made by the Philippines. Fun fact: Sabah is often called the land below the wind because it lies just below the typhoon belt, making it a relatively storm-free area compared to the rest of Southeast Asia. Sabah's people are living proof of the complexities that arise when history, politics, and identity intersect. But how did colonial powers contribute to these complexities? Let's delve into the colonial legacy that still shapes the Sabah dispute. The Sabah dispute cannot be fully understood without considering the colonial history of Southeast Asia. European powers, particularly the British and the Spanish, played significant roles in carving up the region during the 16th to 19th centuries. The legacy of these colonial boundaries and agreements continues to influence modern-day disputes like the one over Sabah. The British North Borneo Company, which effectively governed Sabah as a private colony, is a prime example of how colonial powers operated in Southeast Asia. The 1878 agreement between the British North Borneo Company and the Sultanate of Sulu was typical of the treaties made by European powers with local rulers, vague, open to interpretation, and often serving the interests of the colonizers more than the local populations. When the British decided to include Sabah in the Federation of Malaysia in 1963, they did so based on their interpretation of the 1878 agreement as a cession. This decision was part of a broader strategy to secure British interests in the region, even as decolonization efforts were underway. The process of decolonization after World War II led to the emergence of new nation-states in Southeast Asia, many of which inherited unresolved territorial disputes from the colonial era. The Sabah dispute is one such example, where colonial-era agreements have left a legacy of conflict that continues to affect relations between Malaysia and the Philippines. Fun fact: the British North Borneo Company, which administered Sabah, was one of the last of its kind, a corporation that governed a territory. It was a remnant of the age when companies like the British East India Company wielded power like modern states. Colonial legacies are hard to shake off, but what about the future? Could there be a resolution to the Sabah dispute, or will it remain a lingering issue for generations to come? Let's explore the possible futures for this contested land. Today, the Sabah dispute remains unresolved, but it has significantly cooled compared to the heated confrontations of the past. The Philippines still officially maintains its claim, though this claim has not been aggressively pursued in recent years. This is partly due to the delicate and complex diplomatic and economic relationships between the Philippines and Malaysia. Malaysia, on the other hand, continues to administer Sabah as one of its states. For Malaysia, Sabah is not just a piece of land, but an integral part of the nation, contributing economically and culturally to the country. Sabah's natural resources, including its oil and gas reserves, make it a valuable asset for Malaysia. One of the key reasons the dispute has not escalated into a major conflict is that both nations recognize the high stakes involved. The Philippines relies on Malaysia as a crucial partner in various regional matters, such as combating terrorism in Mindanao, where Malaysian intelligence and support have been essential. Conversely, Malaysia values the economic ties and the stability that comes with maintaining peaceful relations with its neighbor. However, the Sabah issue occasionally resurfaces, particularly during election seasons in the Philippines. Politicians sometimes invoke the Sabah claim to stir nationalist sentiment and rally voters, though this rhetoric rarely leads to concrete actions or significant policy shifts. The dispute remains largely in the background, with both countries prioritizing other matters. Looking ahead, there are a few potential paths to resolving the dispute, though each comes with its challenges. One possibility is that the Philippines could officially drop its claim, but this would require a significant shift in both public opinion and political will within the country, and the Philippines is not abandoning its claim. Alternatively, the dispute could be taken to an international court, like the International Court of Justice, but this carries the risk of a ruling that could leave one or both parties dissatisfied. Most likely, the status quo will continue, with the dispute remaining unresolved but low on the priority list for both nations. Diplomatic talks and regional cooperation might keep the peace, but the underlying issue is likely to persist for the foreseeable future. Fun fact: Sabah is often referred to as the land below the wind because it lies just below the typhoon belt, making it less prone to typhoons compared to the rest of the Philippines. This makes it not just a strategic but also a relatively safe haven in the region. The future of Sabah remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the echoes of history are hard to silence. Whether the dispute is resolved or not, Sabah will continue to be a crucial piece of Southeast Asia's geopolitical puzzle. Let's wrap up by considering what this means for the region moving forward. As we've explored, the Sabah dispute is a complex issue rooted in centuries of history, colonial legacies, and national pride. For Malaysia, Sabah is an integral part of the nation, legally, economically, and culturally. For the Philippines, the claim to Sabah is a matter of historical rights and territorial integrity, although it has taken a back seat in recent years. The people of Sabah, with their diverse cultural backgrounds and identities, are living proof of the complexities that arise when history, politics, and identity intersect. While many Sabahans see themselves as Malaysians, the region's past continues to cast a long shadow over its present and future. Whether the dispute will ever be fully resolved remains uncertain. The status quo has provided a fragile peace, but the underlying issues persist. What's clear is that Sabah will continue to be a key player in the geopolitical dynamics of Southeast Asia. So, what's the final takeaway? The Sabah dispute is more than just a question of borders. It's a testament to the enduring impact of history on modern-day geopolitics. It's a reminder that even in a world of global diplomacy, local identities and historical claims still matter. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Sabah dispute, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content. Your support helps us bring you more stories from around the world. Until next time, keep exploring the world's most intriguing stories.